hosts, Shawn and Marianne Blunt.
As impossible. It did not happen. And then the famous Stemmons Freeway sign. There it is. And that sign was blocking Mr. Zapruder's view, the man who filmed the famous Zapruder film. While the president was behind the sign, he was hit. Mr. Zapruder didn't film that. He couldn't because that sign was blocking his view.
It's like a through shot. You see him coming
that was the back shot. The boat shot and hit the president up here. And that's right. Then the second shot hit him and he went forward from the back. But Mr. Zapruder didn't film that. But as the president comes out behind the sign, what you're saying is very true. You see, there you go. And I'm looking at the whole thing though, but I was standing right there at the corner. So I didn't miss any of it. And we could see the president where I was standing there on the side.
Did you know that they were going to make that turn to come? Why didn't they just go straight?
The motorcade route was changed the morning of the assassination.
So you knew that morning that they were going to come down here?
And the man who changed it was Earl Cabell, the mayor of Dallas. He changed the motorcade route that morning, the day that it happened. And he never denied that. And he wouldn't answer any questions about that. Why? The great thing to that is it tells you in your book, about 3 weeks before the assassination, a month, President Kennedy had fired Major General Charles Cabell of the CIA. He fired him, he fired Allen Dulles, and he fired Richard Bissell. Of course, Charles Cabell's brother, Earl Cabell, was the mayor of Dallas. Charles Cabell, who was in third in command of the CIA, he was born and reared in Dallas, Texas. And in World War II, after he got out of World War II, he became an operative of the CIA. By 1963, he was third in command under Richard Bissell and Allen Dulles of the CIA. President Kennedy fired him October the 4th. He fired Cabell. September the 28th, he fired Bissell, and he had fired Allen Dulles September the 16th. He fired all three of them and replaced them with George Smathers. And that's very true. So that's been documented for years. Even before it, he'd done that before the assassination, naturally. So that was a big part of it. Conspiracy. It was. You may not necessarily have to use that word, but what we do know with this, that was definitely more than one gunman. And Oswald, I'll never believe was one of them. But I play devil's advocate and I still leave it open. Okay, let's say Oswald was shooting. Fine. He didn't fire this shot. So you still got a conspiracy either way you look at it. It doesn't matter because he was set up. But I will always believe in contention, and it's in the book there. Miss Sandra Styles, Miss Victoria Adams, Miss Carolyn Arnold, Miss Geraldine Reed, a lady named Dolores Reed, Miss Helen Walker, and Miss Consuelo de la Garza, 7 female, all women, worked in the Texas School Book Depository with Lee Harvey Oswald. You must remember he had worked there about a month and 1 week. And all 7 of those ladies, on the day of the assassination, the day that it happened, they were taken right over there to the old sheriff's department, that building right over there. And they told the investigators, officers that were interviewing them, they said Oswald was in the lunchroom at the time the shots were ringing out. They heard the shots. Oswald was sitting there at the table. Miss Adams was sitting right across from the table from him. And she said as the first 2 shots went off, She looked at Oswald and she said, "Lee, sound like somebody's shooting a gun." She said Oswald looked at her, never said a word. He made no reply whatsoever. But if you go up to the museum today, and maybe you've been there, maybe it was going today, maybe you've been there before, they're going to tell you that Oswald fired the shots. He didn't. Officer Marianne Baker, still living, Dallas police officer. Within 68 seconds, that would be a minute and 8 seconds, of the president being hit in the head, Officer Baker jumped off his motorcycle and ran into the front door of the Texas School Book Depository. Mr. Roy Truly, the building supervisor, Oswald's boss man, was with him. And as they ran up the stairs and got to the second floor level, Officer Baker had his pistol in his hand. He said, "I saw 2 women and a man in the lunchroom." When the man saw Officer Baker, he got up and started toward the back exit door of the lunchroom. And Officer Baker said, "Hold it." He said the man stopped and turned around, had a bottle of Coke in his right hand, one of those small Coke that we used to get back then. And he walked back up to Officer Baker. He said, "My pistol was almost touching his stomach." And he said, "Sir, what's your name?" And the man told him. He said, "My name is Lee Oswald." About that time, Mr. Truly realized what was happening, because he was ahead of Officer Baker. And Officer Baker had stopped and was having the encounter with Oswald. So Mr. Truly turned back around and came back. And when he saw what was happening, he looked at Officer Baker and he said, "Whoa," he said, "Wait a minute, officer." He said, "This man's one of my employees. He works here." So when he told him that, Officer Baker let Oswald live. But he was in the lunchroom when that happened, as those ladies said. The time allotment would have not allowed him to come down from the 6th floor, wipe the fingerprints off the rifle, hide it between the row of boxes, come down the stairs, and get the Coke out of the Coke box. And he got the change from Mr. Lois Lee to do that. So you're talking a minute and a half, 2 minutes. There's no way he could have done that. There's no way Oswald could have been there. Malcolm Wallace was shooting from the window. Charles Nicoletti was on top of the Daltex building, and the 2 gunmen here on the grassy knoll, ladies and gentlemen, were these 2 men. They fired the shots from the grassy knoll. These 2 men right here. James Files and Charles Harrelson. That's Charles Hitman Harrelson. That is definitely Woody Harrelson's daddy. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Of course, Woody Harrelson's father, Charles Hitman Harrelson, he was a mafia contract killer back in the 50s, way before this album, and had deep ties with the mafia and the Corporate Actions branch of the CIA. James Files was 24 years old. As you can see, this picture was taken 3 weeks before President Kennedy was killed. It was taken in Mesquite, Texas, at a party. And James Files, as Oswald, was 24 years old. He fired the fatal headshot that killed the president. He had the Remington 222 fireball pistol. Charles Harrelson had a Weatherby 308. Weatherby was making rifles at that time. And they were the 2 gunmen on the grassy knoll. 1966, 1967, they both admitted that they were the gunmen on the grassy knoll. James Files is still living. He's in Statesville prison for killing 3 Chicago police officers. 1980. That's what he's in prison for today. 74 years old. And he has a DVD called The Confessions of the Assassin, the James Files story, and he tells the whole thing about the Kennedy assassination. It's almost 4 hours long. He tells the whole thing. Talks about Johnson, how the
What's that called?
The assassination files, the James Files story. Just type in James Files. Google, Yahoo, any of them, it'll pop up. But he's been telling it since 67. But the government has covered it up until Joe West brought it out in 1990. He brought it out officially. Joe West was an investigator for the Secret Service and had known about it many years. And before he died, he went and interviewed Files. It's on taped interview. He interviewed him at Statesville Prison. However, in 1974, Sam Donaldson of NBC interviewed James Files. And he told him the story at that time in 74, 11 years after. They covered that up. The actual file of the interview is in the archives of the FBI building in Washington. That's where it's at today. Much of the evidence, and I know you know the story, it's very true, came up missing. Autopsy pictures Now, the ones in the book didn't, but there were others that did. Statements of witnesses coming of murder, 2 pieces of concrete that were taken out.
There was a lot of people just standing here, right?
There was about 38 people here in the parking lot area. Yes, some of them worked here. Mr. Pete Hunt, Mr. Emerson, Mr. John McClaskey, they were railroad workers. Mr. Bowers, and then you had Mr. Willie Cunningham. He was the county parking lot where you see that little white booth there by the big tree. Several witnesses, and they saw it. They saw these gunmen shooting. I ain't talking about nobody talking about what they saw, what they heard. I'm talking about people who physically, actually saw the 2 gunmen firing. And 17 of them come up dead within a period of 2 years and 10 months. That's all been documented for years. Very true. Documented by the government. However, J. Edgar Hoover and Lyndon Johnson covered it up. Lyndon Johnson signed a 75-year presidential order in 1964 that the Kennedy files could not be released for 75 years, 2039. And that's when they're going to be released. They're called the Kennedy Files. That's what it's called. The Kennedy Files. And they're in the archive. They're locked up. They're sealed. And they will not be released until November of 2039. But Ted Kennedy talked about it. Robert Kennedy talked about it before he was murdered in '68. And Caroline Kennedy has talked about it very recently. President Kennedy's daughter. Very true. Jackie, before she died in 1994, she talked about it. And she said Johnson signed those orders. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just come down on Fridays and Saturdays and tell people what I saw and heard. My name is Mike Brownlow. My picture's in Mr. Groden's book fair and several other books. And I've been doing tours down here about 43 years. Been coming down here talking to people on this grassy knoll. I turned 62 yesterday. And I was born November 1st, 1950. And we had moved to Dallas when I was 4 years old. We moved to Dallas in 1954 from my hometown, Amarillo, Texas, out in the Panhandle. So I've been here in Dallas since I was 4, so that's live. And we came down that morning, rode the bus down from Oak Cliff. Me and my grandmother and my 2 aunts and several of our neighbors. We all rode the bus down that morning downtown to come see the president, Miss Kennedy. And we got here in the plaza at about 11:25. So we had been here about an hour and 5 minutes. When it happened, people were just mingling around, waiting. Of course, we knew he was coming because we could hear the big crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, another thing real quickly, and you can see some of it there in your magazine. From that corner right over there, all the way back up Main Street, it was like 16 deep on each side. I think they estimated 265,000 people on Main Street that morning. But when the car got right there to that corner and made the right and then made the sharp left, here in the plaza, and I was one of them, there was probably about 500 to 600 people because this was the end of the motorcade route right there. And that's why it wasn't many people. But the people that were here, most of them, were down on the sidewalk up there where we were, and over there by the sheriff's department, the records building, people were standing over there. But these people back here, like I said, many of them worked back here. They were county employees. And of course, this was a public and county parking lot. You had to pay to park it, just, public citizens. But the county employees were parked for free. And a lot of them were getting out of the car. So I thank you all for listening, and I appreciate it.
If you like this video and like to see more in the future, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and give us a like below. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comment section. Thanks for watching this episode of Our Haunted Travels.